So if somebody tells us to say, okay, now you have to pay or go away, 98% of us go away because it's not the right time to pay yet. So we have to figure out how we can convert at the right time. GlaxoSmithKline, as I said earlier, the pharma company, has created an open innovation lab for tropical disease research where they donated 1 billion euros worth of research for free. And why are they doing this? Not because they're good at their heart, maybe they are, kind of doubt it though. The $1 billion that they let go creates another 20 billion in research that comes to an open network where people are participating using their own information. The crowdsourced idea, sharing intellectual property. Great book by Don Tapscott, good friend of mine, just came out last week. It's called Radical Openness. And that teaches us about how that can actually work in a capitalist society, in a business scenario. But I think if you're going to build something today in learning, in terms of technology, building a walled garden is mission impossible. Unless you're as brilliant as Steve Jobs, where you can run the world according to your own liking. Rest in peace. He did it. Congratulations. But you're going to do that? You're going to build a walled garden? I wouldn't do it. I think we're looking at a mindset evolution in society, but also in business, from this idea of ownership, of industrial production, to this idea of a networked business scenario. And this is apparent everywhere. It used to be, for example, that learning and development and training was considered in most companies to be sort of accidental, or it's just there somewhere. It's like sustainability. You look down here and you say, oh, that's here, there it is, yes. It also matters, but it's becoming center stage now. How to learn something in a company has become the #1 issue. If your people don't have knowledge, if they don't move, if they don't create, you are dead. You're going to be dead for sure. And you should leave a company that doesn't do that, because there's no point sticking around. Just like sustainability is becoming center stage now. Mindset evolution of what's called the weconomics. Creating something together. So the future in this sector and in many others is about hyper-collaboration. It's not about hyper-competition. It's not about how to stamp out the other guy who has another software like this or who has another offering like this. But it's to actually collaborate, to create collaborative business models, to create ecosystems. For example, Mozilla has a fantastic way of creating collaboration through badges, called open badges. So when you are an engineer that does something really good, you get this badge. And that basically shows people that you've been approved by the crowd of Mozilla. So basically, I think we need to take the lid off these collective resources. And that's happening on a global scale. It's pretty mind-boggling, for example, what Mercedes-Benz is doing, crowdsourcing information about how to build the next car from their drivers. You get invited to this website where you can contribute. They have an open innovation network. I mean, this is a really conservative German company. This is not a bunch of startup guys. Lufthansa came up with an air cargo challenge. And then somebody won, like, I think, €500,000 here, inventing how air cargo can be changed. So let's take the lid off these collective resources because they're vast. Looking at sites like Kickstarter and those that are already doing this, how can you do that as part of your company? Kraft has a great concept called the Collaboration Kitchen, where they invite people to cook up recipes for the new products. And Starbucks has been doing this for a long time, of course, but this is a really powerful thought. How to collaborate there, how do you do this? Another thing that's happening is that, imagine we are in this Rolodex with all of our LinkedIn connections and everyone that we know. There's a huge contextual Rolodex developing. If I have a problem and I need to find out about how people use educational textbooks on the internet in China, yeah, I can research, but I can just go to my network and raise a flag. I can go inside my Rolodex using Smart or others, and I can ask people, you're in China, we've met XYZ, can you send me a link? And in 3 seconds, I have a bunch of people saying, you should look here, you should look there. This is a huge learning advantage, learning from each other, tapping into each other's minds in this way. This also, unfortunately, may lead to this idea of quantified workers. Workers who are basically being rated. For example, you may know about this service called Clout, K-L-O-U-T, to where you get assigned a rating based on your activity on social networks. I have no idea why mine is 71. Maybe somebody rigged it up or something. But if you have a rating over 50, you get an upgrade in many hotels because apparently it's somewhat important, whatever that means. And then there's Salesforce Chatter and, of course, Yammer, to where you can essentially quantify people who are working with you to see how much value they are generating in the network. This will be used eventually as a way of promotion, as a way of figuring out who's actually creating value rather than just noise. And of course, now we're going to touch data. We're going to be able to touch the data from the people that work. We can literally go inside of their brain and find out what they need or what they can give to us. And as Kevin Kelly says, we'll go into a whole new level of visuality. Having visual information, infographics, this is a very big trend for learning. Gamification, I think you've heard about this. Turning learning into games. This is a major trend, and I'm not entirely sure sometimes what the outcome of this is, and it's been overhyped to some degree. But the Gartner report says 40% of global 1,000 companies will use gamification as a primary mechanism to transform business operations and also learning. Gamification means doing something that used to be very frustrating and boring, turning that into an exercise, and doing something, and you can see some of the graphs here, there's a huge business into gamifying processes, learning something as part of a game. An example here is how Marriott has created a Facebook game to recruit people. So you play this game on Facebook and you authenticate yourself as somebody who knows a certain thing, and once you've unlocked a certain level, then you can apply for the job. So this kind of gamification is a mechanism that you know only too well, because in a way Facebook and LinkedIn are also games. We're playing a game of swords there by publishing and pushing stuff to each other. Deloitte has a leadership academy where most of what they do is based on game mechanics. Learning stuff in a playful way. This is a huge business opportunity, in my view, is to consider what this actually does. If you've ever been to Burning Man, I'm not promoting it, I'm just saying that if you don't know what Burning Man is, you're in deep trouble. Right? But my good friend Albert Einstein said, wisdom is the residue of time wasted. I think this is so true. Playing is a competitive advantage. Playing with information, playing with ideas. The Google mantra is 20% of an engineer's time is spent on playing with new stuff. Maybe that's the reason why they're so widely successful for their new products. And playing with information, getting inside of information, is really where we come up with ideas that are human. We don't need ideas that are going to turn us into robots. That may make some money in the short run, but if you want to know about this, watch this new movie called Robot and Frank, or Frank and Robot. You understand where this is going? So the best technologies in my view will help us to be or to remain or even become human. And this is the key challenge, in my view, in learning, is how do we go from the human to the machine, to the data, to the knowledge that's inside of other things? What's the interface? I think efficiency should never come at the expense of humanity. I got this from Bill Teller at HBR, which is very true. If we focus on being efficient in learning, I think we're going to bark up the wrong tree. It's really about being more human, about creating this interface, because as again my friend Albert Einstein says, imagination is more important than knowledge. I don't know if you would agree. I think it's knowledge, obviously, and information is very important. But I don't believe that we can have this sort of techno-fix approach to our issues. We invent another technology to solve a problem that we created with yet another technology. It's like we're going to create machines that suck the carbon out of the air because we drive too many cars. And what's the next thing? We're going to geoengineer the entire world so we can keep those machines running. So there's an issue I think that we should face. We need algorithms and technology, but we also need what I call humanisms. Something that works actually for people. And this is very important because clearly for learning, our brain is a lot more than big data. I mean, there's a huge business in big data, but this is a lot more about other things than just data. Imagination, in my view, will matter more than ever before. And whatever you're creating in the learning industry should take that into account, what imagination would mean in the future, and also what this means, which is resilience. The entire topic of the Davos meetings last week in Switzerland was this: how do we create resilient societies? If something fails here in this system, if this piece of the spider web collapses, the spider doesn't freak out and goes away. It just continues to catch somewhere else, or it fixes it. Only if 90% is broken, then you go somewhere else. Resilience, that's what we need for learning. We have to learn how to be resilient rather than depend on one thing to work at the same time. I think learning now becomes, because of our digital society, learning becomes dynamic, real-time, social, mobile, local, fluid, peer-to-peer, and gamified. And what used to be with learning is also still going to be there. Our old system exists in parallel. It's like we're going to watch television on the internet. Doesn't mean we're going to give up cable anytime soon. Eventually, maybe, some of us. But this is a key slide, of course. So I'll give you a summary, and then we're going to have some questions. You can download the slideshow at gertcloud.com later, or even now if you wish. Here's a summary. First, embrace and design for social, local, mobile. All the major trends in society and in learning and in opportunities in business come from this angle. I mean, 5 years ago, Eric Schmidt from Google said, it's mobile first. 5 years ago. And actually is today. Mobile is first. It's about multi-channel and multi-platform. Whatever you're creating has to work in different places, so you can use it when you're traveling, and then at home you can use it on television, and then you can print out something. It's all one part of the same platform. So centralized, decentralized, and distributed, as the slide was showing from Paul Bunyan, they will coexist. I think there may be a sort of an overlap at a certain point to where the distributed model will eat into the central model. But for the time being, I think the next 5 years we're going to have coexistence and the change of business model there. It's an and world, not an either-or world, and it's also a fragmented world where we are looking at what's coming together between ourselves and what comes from the middle. Next generation interfaces, voice translation, augmented reality, 3D, tangible data. Clearly that is something we have to look at, starting with augmented reality. But don't be a robot. Find and dissect and boot your toxic assumption. This is very important. What are we believing that is there, that's sort of at the core? Like when I worked in the music business, their primary belief was very simple, and that was, if we don't control distribution, the copying of our music, we're dead. Reality is, you control distribution, and you're dead. And they're finding out today that controlling distribution is not an issue, because it can't be controlled. They have to control attention. It's a whole different cup of tea. And they're finally getting to that. So, if a technology doesn't help us to be more human, forget it. I wouldn't be interested. Technology is going to create an algorithm that I have to comply with, like cloud. I'm not interested. This is very important for learning, I think. Open as much as possible is becoming mission critical. To gain an audience, to get speed of deployment. What is not a good idea is to make everything free, just to make it free and not have a way to do anything afterwards. So the freemium only works if you have a way to get to the next level. So this is kind of a dance between open and closed, but clearly open as much as possible is becoming mission critical. The craft example, I consider starting your own collaboration kitchen. Look at your competitors and people outside of your space and say, can I work with these guys? The most common trends now in media, television, music, and so on, is to work with telecom providers and mobile operators. Completely outside of your old routine. So consider starting your own collaboration kitchen. And reduce overload. Talk briefly about this. Get better filters. This is also really important for learning, because when you have overload, you don't learn. And don't forget to detox.